Hello, folks. Yours truly, Randy Rand, and welcome to today's talk. Today we spoke to Dr. Nekeshia Hammond. She's out of the state of Florida, and she's a licensed psychologist, and she's also founder of Hammond Psychology and Associates. She also sits on the board of directors for the Florida Psychological Association and the Ryan Neese Foundation. Today we talked a little bit about depression in children, as well as what effect it has on children when they notice or when they witness, rather, uh, violence in their neighborhoods. And we spoke about quite a few different things as far as mental health in the African American community and how talking about um, mental health issues is kind of taboo. There's a stigma attached to mental health when talking about it in the African American community. And we spoke about that today. It's very informative, and to tell you the truth, she brought it. She brought it. So I certainly hope you enjoyed the interview, and thanks for the time. And we're back, and welcome to today's talk. I'm yours truly, Randy Rand, and it is so good to have Dr. Nekeshia Hammond with us today. She's good enough to give us some of her very valuable time. She's calling us from the very warm state of Florida.
Yes.
She's a licensed psychologist. She's the founder of Hammond Psychology and Associates, and she also sits on the board of directors for the Florida Psychological Association and the Ryan Neese Foundation. How you doing, Dr. Hammond?
Pretty good.
Why don't you introduce yourself to Westchester County, New York?
Well, I'm, like you mentioned, Dr. Nekeshia Hammond, a licensed psychologist. I'm in private practice, and my focus is children, teens, and families.
Children who are witnessing the killings in their neighborhoods go through a traumatic experience indeed. Do these events in their young lives predestine them to negative outcomes?
I mean, it certainly has, unfortunately, a negative impact because you're starting out, life really at a really young age and witnessing things that there's some adults that haven't even witnessed. So it definitely, puts a damper on the situation. But I don't think that those children are without hope. It's just that the community, there's a massive change that needs to occur for the community to heal from these, the killings and the traumatic things that they're witnessing.
We've seen instances where inappropriate behavior may call for corporal punishment, according to others. Can you explain the effect on a child's mental health using corporal punishment?
Sure. I actually did it's similar to a dissertation project on, non-abusive corporal punishment. And really what the research is very consistent in showing is that frequent corporal punishment is actually very detrimental to children. And I definitely understand. I can, already imagine because parents tell me all the time, well, I'm going to spank, and my parents spanked me, and my grandparents spanked, and there's this long history of you have to spank children, but the research over decades is showing that in, like I said, more frequent corporal punishment is actually negative. It has negative impacts on children. That's not to say the spanking every once in a while, but we're talking about every occurrence, something is happening, and the first thing you're doing is physical punishment. It's very damaging for children.
In your opinion, what can be done in the long term to give children stronger chances at achieving positive mental health?
Well, one of the things, something that I'm just a huge advocate for is mentorship. And, I hear all the time from family, well, I don't have time, and I don't have this, or I don't have money. And it's hard. It's hard being a parent, but we have to utilize our resources. So a mentor, there's a lot of mentorship programs. So maybe, if a parent is just working multiple jobs and they don't have time, they can find someone in their community to be a mentor to give the child a shot. Again, research shows time and time again that child, it doesn't have to be a family member, but they need to have a mentor in their life to basically change, their path, if you will, in life.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think it's safe to say that if a child has mental health issues, they'll probably have them into adulthood. In your opinion, what strategies must be employed in order to keep them grounded and productive members of society?
So, and that is true for some children. So, for some children, it leads into the teen years, and then it leads into adulthood. But, which is why I love working with the child and adolescent population in particular, if they receive treatment or some type of help earlier on, then that lessens their chances that those particular mental health disorders will lead into adulthood. And we're not talking about the more serious ones. I mean, with schizophrenia or psychotic behaviors and hallucinations, those, well, more extreme and rare mental health disorders. We're not talking about those, but we're talking about the more common ones like depression, anxiety, or behavioral issues, things like that. You treat it early, and you have a much higher success rate and a less chance that it will happen in adulthood as well.
We are speaking to Dr. Nekeshia Hammond. She's from Florida, and she's a licensed psychologist. She's the founder of Hammond Psychology and Associates. She also sits on the board of directors for the Florida Psychological Association and the Ryan Neese Foundation, and she's good enough to give us some of her very valuable time today. Dr. Hammond, if you could please speak to the importance of the Black community needing to understand the importance of good mental health.
That is unfortunately such a huge issue across the country, and there are a lot of people, like for example, American Psychological Association is trying so hard to work on this issue, particularly like you mentioned in the African American community, of the stigma with mental health. It is so important and valuable that the whole culture just needs to be changed with this idea of, well, either I've heard, well, Black people don't have mental health problems, which is definitely not true, or we don't do that. We don't do therapy, or we don't do counseling. That's not for us, quote unquote. And that is the farthest thing from the truth, and it's sad because what happens is children, teens, families, whomever are suffering because they're not getting the help they need because of, well, there are, resource, barriers and things like that, but also there's a mentality, you don't go to therapy, you don't do that. And we have to change. It's a massive change that needs to occur, but we really have to work on changing that outlook and reducing the stigma.
And you mentioned stigma, which is leading me right into my next question, because I grew up, hearing the very same thing that you mentioned. Well, Black folks don't have mental health issues. That's only for white folks. Black people don't kill themselves. Only white folks kill themselves. And if you grow up hearing that, you're not going to know any better if someone doesn't teach you better. All right.
Exactly.
So how do we end the stigma of mental health in the African American community?
One great way, and there's been, well, I know in our community, more awareness specifically with the church. So, I mean, whatever, the research studies and whatnot do show African American communities, there's a lot of reliance on the church. So you go to, your church family or your pastor or whomever. But at that level, what they've been doing here, anyhow, is some churches have been basically spreading that, the opposite, which is you need to get help if you have a mental health issue. So it starts from there. It starts in the community, but it also starts, like you mentioned, of what parents are teaching their kids at home. So once you have the information that, yes, we can show the numbers, Black people have mental health problems too, you need help as well, and you deserve to have that type of good treatment as well to heal from things, then that is something that you have to teach to children so we can completely change, again, generationally, the outlook on this.
Okay, now please speak about the vulnerability of a person who is suffering from poor mental health and they're not receiving proper treatment.
So really and truly, it affects everyone ultimately because when, I have a soft spot for kids, but, whatever age, if it's a kid, if it's a teenager or an adult, if you're not getting the mental health treatment that you need, it does turn into, for example, with depression, it will worsen. It impacts everything. For children, it impacts their performance in school because they're not concentrating on school. Instead, they're depressed about, whatever it is that's going on in their lives. It could lead to bullying. It could lead to skipping school. Then you lead later on in life to possible juvenile detention. Then you're looking at, criminal behavior sometimes and incarceration because there's mental health issues that are not being addressed.
Speaking from a policy point of view, what type of policies would you like to see implemented in order to provide for better services to those who need them?
I think that there needs to be some of the barriers need to really be removed. We know that that doesn't happen overnight. There's such a lack of education. There's either a lack of the programs, like you mentioned, or the policies, or we have the programs and the policies out there, but people don't know about them. Even in my own community here, sometimes we have something called 211. You just dial literally 211. You get access to someone that can help you with all sorts of mental health resources, where to go for this or that, or if you need assistance. But people don't know about it. So it's like, well, that is something that in the policy we have to work on educating what is available and at what different levels.
How can parents advocate for their children in school, whether it's behavioral problems, learning issues, attention difficulties, and or physical disabilities?
I think that the first step that parents really need to do is to find out what is going on with their child in school. And I've had parents that, I mean, it's kind of sad, but sometimes parents have said, well, I don't know what the grades are. Well, you can't advocate for them, and it's the end of the 9 weeks, and it's like, well, they're failing. I didn't know they were failing. Well, did you check in? Because we have a system here anyhow, and I'm sure many other states have a system where you can go online and check the child's grade. And I'm talking about the younger kids, for example. So that's the first step. You have to know what's going on. You must attend parent-teacher conferences, because then I get calls from teachers that said, well, I haven't seen this parent all year, and now they're upset at the end of the school year because the child has to repeat the grade. They didn't really go in for the parent-teacher conference to know what was going on. You can't skip out on that. Also advocating, because if you think that something is wrong with your child, you need to go to the school and express it. And if you feel like, maybe that teacher or whomever isn't doing anything about it, then there's a lot of ways here, specifically that you can get outside evaluations. That's something that I do. I do evaluations to see, does the child have ADHD or depression or a learning disorder or something of that nature. And if they do, then from there you can get the appropriate accommodations for them. And it completely changes the lives of children. And I see that actually every week. Mm-hmm. So those are a couple ways that parents really have to advocate for their kids.
You're listed in the Tampa Bay Parenting Magazine, the October 2014 issue, as an extraordinary woman. Please speak to your individual efforts to make a difference in your community.
I really love community involvement. I am a huge advocate on community involvement. Right now we do, for my private practice, I have, some individuals that we do free therapy for big brothers, big sisters. And I think it's around 97% or so of the littles in the program are at the poverty line. So those are children that otherwise would not have been able to afford any therapy. So we provide free therapy as long as they're enrolled in the program. We provide free therapy for them. Also, I try to embrace, like I said, the community and encourage all of my staff to get involved in the community as well. So we've done a lot of fundraisers for a program here called Joshua House. And basically it's a program where they basically house children that are in the foster care program, but they're basically the worst of the worst children in terms of the abuse. So this is severe abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, but they're just such a great program because, there's a lot of programs out there, but they do really great things in the community. So we're really actively involved with them. And I'm also really involved with the Florida Psychological Association, and I've had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. and to our capital, Tallahassee in Florida, and really try to advocate legislatively for changes to be made to help families and, psychologists and mental health, the system, if you will. I'm just really a big advocate of, getting out in the community and, doing what you can. I think everyone has something to give. And sometimes, for some people, that's their time. For some people, that's their money. For some people, that's their talent, their connections. But everyone really has something to give. So I'm just a really big advocate on giving back.
Are you familiar with the Pygmalion effect, the self-fulfilling prophecy?
self-fulfilling prophecy, yes.
I wanted to ask you if you believe in it, and if so, please speak about how it relates to achieving positive outcomes for children.
I do. I really do believe in that. And so it's interesting you asked me that because on another radio interview, the host asked me if specifically in the African American communities, if telling children you're never going to make it would help them and encourage them. And I said, absolutely not. And it really, truly is so important to encourage children because they do start to believe what other people are telling them, whether or not that's true. So like you said, that self-fulfilling prophecy, when someone's saying, you know what, even though whatever, it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter you're this, you're that, your color, you're this, you can make it. It's so powerful to them, and it's so motivating for kids to hear that because a lot of times they don't hear that. They hear the opposite. Actually one of my interns now, he was told, he grew up with a reading disability, and he told me himself that you would never make it. Hopefully, I don't know, go join the Army or something like that because you're not going to make it in life. And right now he's about to graduate out of a doctorate level program.
Wow.
But that's not, yeah, I mean, it gives me chills actually because that's not what he was told growing up. Everyone was like, oh, you can't read, you can't this, you can't that. He never had, well, luckily for him, he overcame that, but he didn't have people saying, you can do this, you can make it, until he entered college. And he did say there was a professor there that sat down with him and said, you know what, I think you can do this, I believe in you. But, yeah, that message needs to really come across. And unfortunately, kids do not hear that enough.
I agree. I don't know, it was some years ago I first came across this, Pygmalion effect, the self-fulfilling prophecy. And as I was reading more about it and finding out more about it, I started to see that there were times in my life where teachers, even supervisors, were using that very same technique with me. And it helped me, believe in myself and apply myself, for better and positive outcomes. And I tell you the truth, I don't think that there's enough of it going around, to tell you the truth, because
No.
these children are extremely talented. They have these gifts that are going un that are going un. What's the word I'm looking for here? They're not being challenged. They're not being pushed to
Right.
fulfill these positive outcomes. So I just wanted to ask you that question. We have been speaking with Dr. Nekeshia Hammond. She's a licensed psychologist out of Florida, and she's the founder of Hammond Psychology and Associates. She also sits on the board of directors for the Florida Psychological Association and the Ryan Neese Foundation. Dr. Hammond, we certainly appreciate your time today, and if there's anything that you want to plug right now, say your website or any projects that you are involved in, please feel free to do so.
Sure. My website is www.hammondpsychology.com, or I'm always giving great articles and tips on my Twitter, which is Dr._Hammond.
We certainly hope that this is not the last time that you appear on today's talk with me. And again, thank you for your time, and you have a very happy and prosperous new year, Dr. Hammond.
Thank you so much.